Welcome to BTFDtv. My name's Jack Barnes, and if you've ever seen any of these episodes in the past, you will know that this is where I go to Uncle Bob. However, this is our Phoenix episode, and we are rising from the ashes, and I'm going to guess the first 10 seconds of this episode is lost also. I've got a funny feeling, but that'd be fitting. It went up in smoke. My co-host stood up and walked off camera as I hit the live button, and he didn't log out, and he didn't return. And so this is the part of the episode where I turn to him, and he's not there to talk about politics, which this is a crying shame. I guess we'll just have to skip that part of the episode. So let's go right to our one and only hedge whisperer, who's returning from probably our last episode. So tell me, sir, what is going on in the grain market in this summer of rain?
We are at a, well, thank you for having me, first of all. We're in a situation where nobody is sure exactly what's coming with this crop. We have rain where we don't normally have rain. We have too much water where we normally are dry. We also have dry areas where it's normally too wet. So I guess the market participants are all going back and forth trying to figure out where to take this thing. We've already come way down from last year, and we've kind of had a happy medium above last fall's lows and below the spring highs, and we could break out in either direction kind of based on what happens dead of summer and some of the issues, other issues of trade and dollar issues will affect the price also.
So one of the things that I've noticed that farmers focus on is the strength in the dollar or weakness in the dollar and how that correlates for the value of their crops in the field. Can you go into a little detail about that?
I can go into a little detail. I am in no way an expert on the machinations of the dollar, but I do know that in the broad picture of things, our commodities are priced in dollars. And because of that, everything that you sell in dollars is affected by how strong that dollar is or weak. We had a very weak dollar when the economy was in the obvious tanking mode, 08 through last year. And it made commodity prices go up. We had high gas, we had high oil, but we also had high corn and beans. And wheat was doing well also. Well, last spring, the dollar decided to break out of the range it had been in and headed back toward par. So we went from 84 cents up to $1, which is not truly, as far as the rate is calculated, that's what they had it for. And now we're back in the bouncing around low 90s to mid 90s. So we've already took a chunk off the prices. Now what that does now is not to be all end all, but it kind of gives it gives you a base from what to take every other bounce or decline off of is value of the dollar.
All right, so in simple terms, a strong dollar is good for U.S. citizens. It is bad for U.S. commodity producers.
I would say that. It's not a day-to-day thing, but in long term, yes. When the economy it was growing. It wasn't actually great, but say the mid 80s, the turnaround from the Carter years, the dollar got up to a 1.2 valuation. So, and that was the depth of the farm crisis, when we had farm aid start, people had to sell out and all that. Well, obvious that the opposite happened when the value went down to 72 cents or so, is when we had $7 and $8 corn, and farmers were doing well. Now the bounces in between aren't perfect, and you can't, like day trade it. But as far as a big picture thing, I honestly believe that the dollar is the thing that I need to keep track of for my,
as a commercial farmer.
As a commercial farmer.
Thank you. It appears the only, my co-host, my uncle, my best friend has deign to join us now.
Hi, welcome. Sorry, this has been glitchy. I don't know if it's my computer or setup, whatever. But anyway, what I want to do is, typically I talk about U.S. politics a little bit, so I was just going to give people a very brief synopsis on the 2016 election. And the way I'm going to do this largely is give you candidates to ignore. As TV is constantly trying to get people to pay attention to somebody, and same with journalism, I'm going to tell you who to ignore. First off, Dr. Carson, very bright guy, great surgeon, lost some key people to his campaign. Like two of his top people left this week. He's in dire straits. Secondly, Governor Bobby Jindal, who was yelling and screaming and pounding the table about the recovery in Louisiana, he's down to now 32% in Louisiana. So he's not exactly doing too well. His budget's a mess. He's got all types of problems, no interest. He's done. Next, Carly Fiorina. Here is a let's see. Let's count out her accomplishments. They failed.
Hold on. Was she not fired at her last two jobs?
I don't know, but last two, I'm not sure. Was there one after HP that I'm not thinking
No,
of?
I don't think she worked again after HP. I was kind of thinking about Lucent.
No, I don't think she was fired from Lucent. She was still employed at Lucent when she took the job at HP.
Right.
But anyway,
I could have sworn that she was on the wings out, but all right.
Well, we have another failure to think too, which is her failed Senate campaign, her inability to knock out arguably the youngest member of the Senate, Senator Barbara Boxer. She wasn't able to do anything there. You can ignore her. Next, Senator Lindsey Graham, whose numbers, even in his home state of South Carolina, are not doing well. My information tells me that Senator Graham is in the race for one reason and one reason only. It's not to just bang the table about U.S. troop movements. Rather, it's to thwart Rand Paul. So look for that in a couple of weeks. Next, former Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor Mike Huckabee may have been a force in 2012. Didn't want to run. Was living in his fat house down in the panhandle of Florida that he built with his wife. He's done. Cooked. Next, Governor George Pataki. Why this guy is running, who is paying attention to this man, is beyond me. Next, Tricky Ricky Santoro. Again, his claim to fame is that he managed to lose his re-election campaign for Pennsylvania Senate by 17 points. He did win the Iowa caucuses last year by 4 votes, or last term by 4 votes, but he is to be ignored. The one caveat that I mentioned to you, Jack, a little bit in pre-prep, is that he does Foster Freeze, a retired hedge fund executive worth well in excess of $1 billion, is got significant money behind him, so he may hang around for quite a while. Anyway, let's move to the Democratic side quickly. Hillary continues to answer no questions. So just, who knows what's going on there? She's getting away with it because she's got, right now, 4 potential competitors. First off, former governor, former senator Lincoln Chafee. Ignore him. Just ignore him. His biggest proposal was for the U.S. to adopt the metric system. Who knows why this guy's doing what he's doing? Next is the former governor of the state of Maryland, Mr. Malloy.
Can this guy pose without showing his chest? I haven't seen him with his clothes on yet. I call him the naked presidential prospect.
He's the same age as me. He's horrible. Preceding being governor of Maryland, he was best known as mayor of Baltimore. which is just a wonder of success.
Such an improved city over the years.
Yeah, right. All right, let's move on to the next candidate who I think is going to enter and may pose, at least be the most interesting person to interview on TV, and that is former Senator, former Undersecretary of Defense, Jim Webb, who is, to my mind, a man of substance. Didn't really care for the Senate much because he thinks they're a bunch of blowhards. So, I mean, I think the guy's very bright, very interesting.
Hey, Uncle Bob, I need to cut you off. We're going to come back to the rest of the Democrats. We are. But we've gone 7 minutes when I never let you get in 70 seconds. So I'm going to go back to our guest for a few moments and, see if any of our audience is still alive and awake that are farmers that might be interested on grains. Then we'll come back to that great Democratic lineup.
Well, it just sounds like to me we just won't have any candidates, So.
We're a ways out there. It could be a little while until we actually have a couple of candidates that rise out of the pack. And so there's a couple I'm going to bring up when we go back to the Democratic ticket in about 15 minutes. Let's go to grains. We've got rain in places, lots of it, as you mentioned, yes. Places that it's normally not at. So in the great weather chaos, thoughts on corn valuations. You and I privately have had a conversation on this. So, folks, little pre-disclosure here. There is a bit of agreement, oddly, between the Whisper and I on a possible event in the future. And so, without getting into the details per se of that trade, what are your thoughts about corn based upon planting and current conditions?
Well, first I'll give you a little background. I've been farming. I'm 44 now. I've been farming since I was 13 in FFA. Really started watching the markets in my early 20s. So, I kind of remember the 1993 flood was a big deal. The whole Midwest, Missouri and Mississippi, everything flooded that year. And it took out, tens of millions of acres. It ruined tens of millions more. That is what's in the back of the mind of every trader, producer, and consumer, I guess, of grain, is that if it keeps on raining, what do we have then? If it does this now and we turn off dry and go into regular season, we probably haven't heard a thing, and we've got some downside to the grains, some fairly big downside with Brazil having such a wonderful year. But it's a possibility that these, humidity begets more thunderstorms, and there's water standing around, and it's possible that some of these areas may get a thunderstorm every night or every other night, and next thing you know, your beautiful knee-high green corn becomes underwater yellow corn, and that's when trying to figure out how many acres we really lost will become a big thing. Yield, of course, is the big thing.
Hey,
but
when do they start the corn tours again?
The real tour will be in August, but become end of June and July, people will start taking real effect of what actually is going on out there. Right now, everything is based on what projected is, and we just came off a record yield. So of course they're projecting we can do that again, or within 2 or 3% of it. And the reality of that is something is going to ding the crop somewhere. Some of it's going to get too wet, some's going to get too dry. Last year we just had 85% of the country had perfect weather, cool summer nights. If it's wet,
one of our viewers in West Central, it's IN. I'm going to take that as Indiana.
That should be.
Our hippie farmer says that there's really good corn where he's at. However, it's about one tick off from where it was at this time last year.
Okay.
So from that perspective, where he's at, he's seeing good stuff. I'm actually, hey, since he's watching and he's in the chat room, if I send you the link in DM, do you want to drop in and join us on air for a few moments? That's one thing about the show is that you're always welcome to join us, hippie. I could always use a little hippie backup on the show. So let us know if you want to come on air, and I'll send you a link. All right, so back to grains. Tell me about the other ones, the ones that people aren't talking about, right? So that'd be what, Milo at this time of the year? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Milo has gotten, exciting because China turned to that when they were doing the non-GMO year of corn is 750. I don't want to buy it anymore.
Yeah.
And so they turned away from our corn until the prices came back down. They're back in the corn now. But I think they found out that Milo really did work for them. It was a crop that we had kind of let slide in the U.S. for a while. It was only like pocket areas that grow it. The problem with that is everybody saw it at the same time. I feel like, especially with a wet, I call it desert Southwest, but Oklahoma, Kansas is green, and they'll have land that they can plant stuff on that normally is left fallow. That maybe the wheat got ruined, and then the rains came. I feel like the Milo thing is great for the ones last year and the ones that decided this year early to do it and contracted. But if you've got Milo thinking you're gonna get rich off of it by not doing anything, and everybody else brings it in October, it's not going to be worth that much either. But that is something good. Wheat is, of course, something that everybody is kind of, the whole world grows it. It all grows in every season throughout the, spring and fall in every hemisphere. So you get about 4 crops a year. So you can kill all the wheat, and 3 months later, it'll be back. But that said, 2008, 2009, we killed all the wheat, and then we killed more of all the wheat, and we killed more of all the wheat, and the world couldn't get their hands on it, and it, doubled and tripled in price. So anything can happen, but coincidentally, that was also at the low point of the dollar value. So I feel like
funny how weather and the dollar sometimes are brutal.
Yep. So I feel like if we start hitting some rough patches with the crops, yes, they can go up. Yes, they could go up substantially. But to hit those high marks we had 2 and 3 years ago is doubtful at this dollar level, in my opinion.
All right. What are you watching for in the markets?
To be honest, I kind of watch and see what everybody's thinking, and when everybody gets thinking one thing, it's time to start
hit the other side of the boat.
Hit the other side, just like a stock or anything else. It's just one of those things. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, go a lot further one way or the other than you should. And that's kind of what I count on. Is everybody talks like the funds control the markets. They don't truly control them, but they control how much past logic we go to. They took us higher than we should have been when we were short grains, and I'm afraid they may take us lower this fall than we should be now that grains have established a equilibrium, I guess, of everybody has enough to get through the year anyway.
All right. So I got a question for you. Is there any way to short, like, John Deere dealerships?
I don't know. There probably, I'll go right off and say I don't know this for a fact, but I think there probably are some conglomerate dealers that have stocks. But most of all, it would be the parent company.
Yeah.
And then we've got to decide whether they decide to actually rebuild the highways or something. Construction can bring the parent company back in, but I do not think that it's a good year for farm equipment for John Deere or anybody else, and probably won't be for another 2 to 3.
I was going to say that the current stock of new equipment that has low hours and no demand for it will be around for a period of time to absorb new use demand. I mean, not a lot of farmers right now need to rush out and buy 10 new top-of-the-line combines.
No, and the ones that do are not listening to us or anyone else. They're so big that they've got their orders in every year. But no, it's true. We were able to update equipment, and we are pretty average farmers, and I see it with everyone else, is the last 4 or 5 years, farmers were able to take a set of equipment that they had completely worn down and patched and upgrade it to another set that they may have to completely wear down and patch.
But so, they got the new starter.
yes, and that doesn't mean that sales will die. Everybody breaks something, or something
sure.
breaks in two, and you have to buy. You just won't be buying 3 and 4 pieces at a time if you're an average size farmer.
All right, Uncle Bob.
Yes, sir.
Let's bounce around the world a little bit. Thoughts about this place called England? I'm going to pick a fight here. This place called England that appears to be in the process to spin off their cousins to the north, and the term Greater and Britain may become a statement of the past. Thoughts?
My thought is that that's not going to happen. I think it's a worthy political discussion. I think there was real concern when the polling came out prior to the Scots vote, but it made clear that a lot of polling people said after the fact was that people lied to the pollsters now.
All right, next one, the vote. EU, England, Great Britain, in or out? See, we got two different in-outs there.
Well, that's interesting. As I think Jack, but audience members may not know. There was a leak of a government-developed document about England leaving the EU, which created quite a kerfuffle over there. Not so much here, but it is certainly interesting and worthy of talking about.
All right. And then third one, the special relationship between U.S. and Great Britain. Is it still on track after this election cycle?
After the British election?
Whenever we get, when we get a new... how much of the lack of specialness is a lack of current presidential interest?
Well, I think part of it is just the change in Great Britain's status. I mean, it is spending less on defense. It's less worthwhile to have a special relationship with them. They simply don't have the hardware, the money spent to do things, that we really need them as a partner. I mean, whether we need them or not is a different matter, but they're just simply not spending the money to be ready to do that.
Okay. You read the article on the SEAL teams and the New York Times. It was a very long and interesting read. Thoughts on U.S. foreign policy in the 21st century?
Well, I think that article, people will read it, and people of a certain political persuasion will read it. Well, the SEALs are all, are bad. It's just a use of political power, a use of military power outside the scope of what the United States needs to do. Other people will say, oh, it's a hit piece by the New York Times. I see it totally down the middle of that. I don't think it's a criticism at all of the SEALs themselves. I think it's a political criticism of the politicians who just say, I don't want to see, I don't want to hear, I don't want to speak. Just do it.
All right. So, new story. Moving through. We're going to start keeping these a little shorter, and that way we can, move on when we don't have anything to bite on. It appears that Uncle Sam arrested FIFA.
They did indeed.
Hey, we're going to deal with that whole damn thing about you calling it football. We're just going to throw its ass in jail. It's soccer, baby.
Well, I tell you what, I think that much of the world community, excluding perhaps the Middle East or portions of the Middle East and Russia, largely applauded it. It was very interesting. I mean, while the current Attorney General Loretta Lynch got most of the credit associated with this, this is a very long-tailed investigation, and they weren't. It wasn't done lightly. I heard it largely applauded by football fans around the world. I
Well,
mean,
it
if you read. I'm sorry.
no
Yeah, we
problem.
have a coach. Please join in, coach.
Yeah, I want to feel like I know something other than what Corn's doing. The problem I saw was that everybody talked of this. It was a given. Everybody talked about the corruption. They talked about the people that did had the bids. I was trying to get my words and make it sound like I don't know
No
what I'm
worries.
talking about. But anyway, we knew that the bids weren't probably up and up. We knew, when Qatar and Russia won, that something was afoot. But yet, like I said, nobody would take it on. I think that football is so ingrained in other countries that those governments were scared to feel like they were attacking football if they went after FIFA. Where here we
Yeah,
can just
the U.S. was the one nation that could say. This is like what, sport number 7 or 8 on our list. So
Yep.
if there's crime and it's time, then we've got some spare cells in Guantanamo. By the way, that's the joke, right? I'm waiting for the arrest to expand in FIFA, and we have so many in the federal system. The only logical place is to club-fed Guantanamo, or a portion of it, okay? So these guys get to do a bunch of time in Cuba.
I thought the most interesting little side bit of this story that came out later was the fact that there was a miscall in a preliminary game between France and Ireland. There was clearly a handball. I think it was Theory committed it. Wasn't called. FIFA paid off the Irish soccer association, football association, $8 million, which is
$8 million for an intentional not call. Wow.
Yeah, and just so they would shut up.
Just shut up and go away. Here's $8 million. All right.
And they took it.
Hey, well, yeah, like you turned that one down too. I don't think is. By the way, was that against the law for the organization to take the payment? There's a question. All right. So if it's an org to an org, it's never bribe, right?
Private is private.
All right. So, hey, we have the one, the only. I was hoping he could drop in. The hippie farmer. We have our youngest guest joining us also. So, Sir Hippie, can you give us a little background on our new guest, and then we'll hit you with some questions.
Hey, this is Evan. Today is his first birthday. And
hello! Happy birthday, Evan!
Yeah, say happy birthday. So he's having a hard time going down for the night, so I might have to get up maybe.
So, tell us about corn in your area, sir.
Hey, corn got in really quick here. Driving between Illinois and Indianapolis, it's looking just a couple ticks off than last year. There's some really good-looking corn, some really not so good-looking corn because of the moisture that we've had. I would say most of our soil is pretty saturated. Like Stephen was saying earlier, if we get a lot of rain and this turns off pretty wet, it'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
All right, so you guys need my drought about now.
We don't need that big of a drought. No, thank you.
At least a couple of weeks or months of it, though.
Hey, yeah, Corey Ritter's got to go fishing sometime.
All right, so hold on. We have an actual question from our audience. It's from the one, the only Corey Corn himself. And it's for Uncle Bob. So, Uncle Bob, don't let it go to your head, all right? I don't need that ego swelling anymore that you're getting, like, call outs from farmers to talk about politics. I don't see this, but anyway, here we go. The question is, Jack, ask Uncle Bob if the conservative Illinois Gov gaining some ground on budget cuts and approval ratings gives us a preview of 16.
I guess yes, in the sense that, although, I mean, I'll be careful with that. There's only one political person on the right that has discussed any matters of policy whatsoever, and that has thus far been Chris Christie. Chris Christie talked about raising the retirement age and really challenging Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. Other than that, it hasn't gotten much traction. In fact, what you've seen is a large portion, albeit candidates that I think are going absolutely nowhere, talking about certain outreach to groups that the Republican Party has not been successful in getting involved in the Republican Party.
All right, so Uncle Bob, while you're actually talking and I'm letting you run with it, and we're now in the second half an hour, and we're 2 minutes in, so that would be where you get to talk about your Democratic Party lineup that I cut you off on.
There was only one more left, Jack, and that is Senator Bernie Sanders, who has surprised some on the left. He's gained a little bit of traction, but his traction is really limited.
Well, yeah, he's progressing and putting forward a 90% tax rate, right? Is that?
That's what he's talking about. I mean, the whole thing.
Unemployed millennials love it.
All right, wait. In a former life, as you well know, but the audience doesn't know, I used to be a tax attorney before I retired. So I know a little something about this. The whole canard about the 90% tax rate, whether currently or whether what Ronald Reagan did or what was done under Eisenhower, is a canard. It's BS. Pay no attention. Pay no attention to the little man in the room. Anyway,
all right.
So, but the interesting thing, the impact that Sanders could have is in the state of Iowa. In the state of Iowa, you have a very left segment that is going to vote. And Sanders and the Clinton team already floated it out this week. We don't expect to get above 50%. And if we don't get above 50% in Iowa, that's not a problem. So that's telling you that their internal tracking is showing.
There's no way in hell.
Right.
Well, it's showing him gaining steam.
All right. So, Hippie, tell me about what your opinion is on the U.S. dollar and implications for it for crops. I got the hedge whisperer on record, but let's hear yours. Do you follow that same thought process?
I don't follow the U.S. dollar like you guys do. I'm busy outside. That's why I have you guys. You guys are my advisors when it comes to that. But what Stephen was saying throughout the past and the relationship the dollar has with the grains, I understand that. I agree with it, but there's no way I can speak with the knowledge that Stephen has.
I don't know if I speak with the knowledge I have.
I'm not sure either, do I. All right, so here's another one. What do you like? All right, first of all, do you hedge your crops, or do you just grow it and sell it?
I'm not as deep into hedging as Stephen is. I know he is quite a bit. I do a little bit. I mean, nothing on the scale that he does. I haven't been farming as long as he has, just the last few years. Taking baby steps now. We do forward contract grain, and we'll do different kinds of contracts, and we'll set basis at certain times that we feel. So that's kind of our simple plays on the grain market. It's there are still a few guys, some of the older guys that'll harvest and sell in the fall, and that's just what they do. And some of these old guys will tell you can't make any money forward contracting grain. And I really want to know how much they missed out on here in the last few years of not doing that. We'll sell a year or two ahead of time, and that's kind of our hedging, without getting into just paper farming.
Sure. Oh no, there's some paper farmers out there, and I've been accused of it myself, I'm sure.
And
So,
another hedge that I have, I think, that a lot of guys don't, and maybe sometimes I wish I didn't, is cattle. Having the cattle is such a nice hedge,
Yep.
especially with the outlook that some people have on grains. It's pretty bearish right now.
I think Jared would be the one who says there's, if you have a crappily grown field and you can move cows in, it ain't that bad of a field.
Yeah. You always have an out.
All right, so gentlemen, open call. Is there any topics you want to bring up? Any topics you want to touch on? Anything you want to be specific about, and/or we'll wind this episode up? This is the last question call.
Hey, I kind of missed what Stephen was saying a little bit earlier about, maybe I caught the tail end. Was he speaking of some maybe future opportunities if we go into a decline for some guys that are in a strong position right now?
I didn't jump into that too hard, other than the fact that there definitely are the haves and the have-nots, and some people foresaw the ability that we wouldn't be in, I don't know even how to word it, what we've had the last, in 2012 and 13. But there will be people that planned ahead and people that didn't. And the ones that planned ahead, very, very real possibility that, some of them will have to look for another vocation. And that is, the time to grow. I did not try to pick up any land in the last 5 years because everybody could afford it and everybody was bidding it up. I hope I'm in a position I hope that people do not fail, but if the failure happens, I hope that, that would be another time for people trying to expand to take advantage of that particular thing. But no, I love it when everybody's making money. I'm not a jealous person, but in real business, you have to see what's coming down the road and hopefully be ready for it. Or somebody may be picking up some of the land I had if I didn't do well at something. And that's a very possibility too, with our weather.
Yeah, I just see, some of the ground out here that's probably, sub $200 an acre cash rent, going for $300, even $400 in the last couple of years. I obviously now I don't have their cost of inputs, their cost of seed, their fuel. Maybe they're getting a great deal, but
it's not that much different. We're a farmer of scale in our area, and I would say it's probably not 2% savings you get. They want to say they're saving a lot of money, but the reality is everybody's cut margins so much that I doubt that they got that much better deal than we do.
With that kind of thing going on, it just seems like in the next year or two, that's what's going to be the opportunity. Maybe some of that ground that's been high dollar. But what happens when the landlords or the owners of the ground that's been getting that much? How long is it going to take them to come down to reality?
It may take 2 rounds of contracts. It may take somebody else being brave enough to try it again at, say, 260 instead of 300, and then that person not making it before you get back to the 180, 200 again. We don't have the same rents because we don't have the same production soils, but
right.
what we're seeing is the fact that I personally have never had, in 25 years, I've never had a piece of ground come down in rent. It may maintain for 10 years, but if you
prices
offer that
don't drop.
Yeah, if you offer a price, you better be ready to pay it, because that landowner gets used to it, and he's gonna find somebody else to try to do it until it physically sits, until it's vacant.
Until he loses a year or two.
Yes, that's my opinion. But that doesn't mean that the natural percentage that rolls over every year or two, go from maybe 0.5% to 2 or 3%. That 2 or 3% may become more affordable, as it comes up. It's just, it's not going to be easy on anybody, but it is opportunities, and I actually, of course, everybody would have been great to start farming in 2008, 2009, but the ones, that start in a downtrend may actually, make out in the long run better for the, to acquire some land without high expenses and be able to
Some
hold
modern
on to it until the
equipment
next
for
time.
a discount.
Yes. Yeah, cheaper equipment. Good point.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
stop rambling.
the machinery market's probably a whole nother half-hour conversation at least.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we have you guys back for the machinery conversation in a week or two? We'll pick that topic up.
Yeah. Hey, another good one for that would be Aaron Bobeck. I don't know if any of you guys follow him on Twitter, but he keeps a pretty close tab on auction values as well.
Very good.
Reach out to him and ask him if he wants to come on air.
Will do.
And we'll have him drop in for a 15, 20-minute segment.
Thanks,
Sounds
Jack.
good.
Thanks, Bob. Good to see you, Joe.
Yeah, you too.
Hey, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us here on BTFDtv. This is the Phoenix episode. It's the first one at the new site. A little background. YouTube changed their API from a 2.0 to a 3.0, and the new API removed abilities that were built into the 2.0. And so in doing so, the way we had our old website built, we can no longer replicate it, and the ability to present a TV-like channel went away via YouTube. Maybe they figured out what we were doing. They took it away from us. Don't know. This is our current solution. It will get better, folks. This was the holy crap, we got to have something that works again thing. So give us a little patience, and it will improve. Uncle Bob, any last words before I cut you off for the last time until our next episode?
Nothing from me.
All right, I love you. All right, everybody. On that note, have an absolute good one. We'll be back in a week. Stay safe. And on behalf of the crew here at BTFDtv, stay healthy out there.
All right.
See you, Jack.